Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into a pretty significant political event that just unfolded in Ghana. We're talking about the new Patriotic Party's National Delegates Conference. It happened recently, Saturday, July 19th, 2025, right there in Accra. Now, our mission today is simple. Give you a real shortcut to understanding some crucial internal shifts happening within the NPP. Because the delegates there, they approved this huge list, 54 motions, all aimed at strengthening the party's structure, its policies, looking ahead to the 2028 elections. But, and this is where it gets really fascinating, amidst all of those approvals, they also firmly, decisively rejected two key proposed constitutional amendments. So what's this all about? What does it mean for the NPP's internal democracy, its strategy, its readiness? That's what we're here to unpack. These motions, they cover a massive range: constitutional tweaks, electoral reforms, grassroots power, policy, governance. It really shows a commitment, or at least an attempt, at internal reform. Okay, let's dig in.
Absolutely. And what's really revealing, I think, is that contrast. You've got this wave of approvals, 54 of them, but then these two very specific rejections. It paints a very clear picture, of what the delegates see as core priorities. It's not just about change. It's also about what they absolutely want to protect.
Protect. That's a good word for it. Let's actually start right there with those rejections, because they definitely sent a signal, didn't they? Two proposed constitutional amendments hit a brick wall. The first one, Motion 17, dealt with who supervises polling station elections.
Yes, that's right. The proposal was to amend Article 730 and essentially give regional executive committees the power to appoint these supervisors, people who aren't currently officers at the local level.
Right.
So it would have shifted some power upwards away from the constituency level.
But the delegates said no.
Decisively. A voice vote, and it was a clear rejection. The feeling on the ground, from what we understand, was strong. Keep that oversight at the constituency level. It's about grassroots accountability, protecting the autonomy of those local party structures. It really speaks to a belief in local control.
Holding on to that local power base.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Then there was the second rejected motion, Motion 54. On the surface, this one seems almost, administrative. Redefining youth in the party as anyone not above the age of 35.
Right, and you might think, okay, that aligns with international standards.
Exactly. Kojo Opon Nkrumah, who championed it, pointed that out. He mentioned the UN, WHO, UNICEF, the African Youth Charter. They'll use 15 to 35. He even noted Ghana's own National Youth Authority Act uses 15 to 25, so there's precedent.
There is. But despite all those benchmarks, external ones and even a national one, the delegates rejected this too, firmly. And this tells you something deeper. It wasn't just about an age number. It was seen, perhaps, as potentially undermining the influence or the structure of the existing youth wing. It signals, I think, a real resistance to changes that might dilute established internal power centers, even if those changes seem logical based on external definitions.
So internal dynamics and perceived power trumping external standards.
Precisely. It shows how those internal party calculations, the desire to protect existing structures and representation, can sometimes override proposals that look, quite reasonable from the outside.
That's a really sharp insight. So the delegates drew a clear line. Protect local oversight, protect the current youth structure setup. Okay, but then what about the floodgates that did open? 54 approved motions. That's a lot of change. What kind of vision does this paint for the NPP's future? Let's pivot to those approvals. We can probably group them into a few key themes to make sense of it all. First up, let's look at internal governance and accountability. Seems like several motions were aimed squarely at tightening things up, refining the admin structure.
Yes, quite a few. For instance, Motion 2 changes how suspensions work. The power to recommend suspension now goes to the disciplinary committee first, not straight to the executive committee.
So adding a layer of process there.
Exactly. A bit more due process, maybe less perceived arbitrariness. Then there's Motion 10, which is quite significant. It basically says if you're a party officer and you get appointed into government minister, CEO, whatever, can't keep your party job.
Oh, interesting. What's the thinking there?
The official rationale is clear. Focus on your government mandate. Let other competent party members step into the party roles. It tackles that potential conflict of interest or just the sheer workload.
Makes sense. Two big jobs.
Right. And it prevents individuals from potentially using their party position to leverage government influence or vice versa too directly.
We also saw Motion 38 clarifying that the National Treasurer reports to the General Secretary.
Yeah, reinforcing the General Secretary's role as the party's chief administrator, the CEO, as they put it, clear lines of authority.
In Motion 39, this one caught my eye, removing the president from the National Steering Committee.
The idea seems to be to keep that committee focused purely on the elected party leadership, the presidential candidate, a parliamentary leader, and Council of Elders chair. A bit more separation, maybe.
Keeping the core party strategy group distinct from the sitting government executive, perhaps.
Potentially. And then you have motions 40, 41, 42, which finally bring in formal procedures for removing polling station and electoral area officers and other appointees. Apparently, the Constitution was silent on this before. So now there are clear steps requiring approval from higher committees or recommendations from specific bodies. It adds structure.
So putting rules in place where there were gaps.
Exactly. Taking all these together, the suspension process, the rule about government appointees, the reporting lines, the president off the steering committee, the removal procedures, it points towards a more structured, formalized internal system, clear admin lines trying to reduce conflicts of interest, standardizing discipline. It's about building perhaps a more accountable internal machine.
A more professionalized machine, maybe. But you raised a good point earlier. Is there a risk that making things too structured could slow things down or even stifle debate?
That's always the balancing act, isn't it? Structure brings clarity and fairness, hopefully. But too much bureaucracy can definitely hinder agility and responsiveness. How they implement these rules, whether they become tools for control or genuine frameworks for accountability, that'll do the real test.
Something to watch. Okay, so they've tightened the internal rules. What about who gets to participate? That seems to be the next big area of change. Expanding the electoral college, promoting fair competition. Looks like some dramatic moves here.
Oh, absolutely dramatic. Look at Motion 6. Polling station executives increased from 5 to 7. And crucially, all 7 are now elected.
That's a jump.
It's a 40% increase right at the base. It significantly expands the electoral college, and the party explicitly links this to their eventual goal of a one-man, one-vote system, more grassroots power.
And then Motion 9 makes communication officers at all levels, polling station, constituency, regional, national elected position.
Yeah, previously appointed. Yeah. The rationale given was pretty blunt. Appointments were fraught with a lot of challenges, perceptions of favoritism, so let the delegates choose.
Making those key messaging roles directly accountable to the members.
Seems to be the idea. And the National Communications Officer even gets a title change to Director of Communications.
And the expansion continues outwards, right, with the external branches?
Yes. Motions 19 and 20 grant voting rights to all former and current external branch executives in presidential primaries and all current executives at the National Delegates Conference. Before, only 12 external branch execs got to vote at the national conference. So this brings in potentially many more voices from the diaspora.
Recognizing their contribution, maybe?
And broadening the base. Then you have the rules about people in power running for office. Motions 43 and 46. If you're a national officer, minister, CEO, government appointee, you have to resign your position well in advance if you want to contest a primary.
How far in advance?
12 months before the national election if you're challenging a sitting NPP MP, and a full 24 months, 2 years, if you're aiming for the presidential candidacy.
2 years. Wow. That's designed to level the playing field.
Explicitly. The rationale is to ensure fair competition and level playing field. It stops incumbents using state resources or their position for campaigning right up to the wire.
That could really change the dynamics of who decides to run.
It absolutely could. And more voters, too. Motions 44 and 45 give voting rights in primaries to a whole range of former officials, MPs, ministers, constituency, and regional execs, as long as they're current card-bearing members.
Again, expanding the college, bringing experience back into the fold.
Exactly. But perhaps the biggest earthquake in this category is Motion 47.
Ah, yes, the superdelegates.
Gone. Completely abolished. The special electoral college for presidential primaries is no more.
Why now?
The party's official reason: it has outlived its usefulness, which, is a polite way of saying it was causing too much internal friction, seen as undemocratic by many.
So a massive shift of power back to the broader delegate base for picking the presidential candidate.
A fundamental shift. And linked to that, Motion 48 sets the timing for electing that candidate when the party is in government. It has to happen not later than 18 months before the national election, moved up from 11 months.
Giving the candidate more time.
An extra 7 months to campaign, build unity, and present themselves to the country. That's a significant advantage compared to the old timeline.
So, taken together, expanding the base, electing communicators, bringing in external branches and former officers, the resign to run rules, killing superdelegates, earlier primaries. What's the big picture?
The big picture seems to be a really concerted effort to democratize internal elections, broaden the base of support needed to win a primary, make competition fairer, and maybe reduce the incumbency advantage within the party structure itself. It's a major shakeup. It could lead to more competitive, maybe less predictable internal races.
Definitely sounds like it could energize the base, but maybe also make leadership contests more complex to manage for the party hierarchy.
Potentially, yes. More voices, more democracy often means less central control. That's the trade-off.
Okay, final theme. Streamlining operations and boosting policy input. This sounds more about the nuts and bolts to the day-to-day running of the party.
It is, but some important changes here, too. Motion 4, for instance, adopting the official Electoral Commission boundaries for the party's internal electoral areas.
Practical?
Very practical. Avoids internal fights over drawing lines. The EC system is seen as predetermined, less controversial, smart efficiency.
And Motion 13, changing the big conferences, constituency, regional, national, from annual to biennial every 2 years.
Yeah, the idea is this frees up time and resources for other important party activities, prevents conference fatigue maybe, and allows for better preparation when they do happen.
Makes sense. Less frequency, maybe more impact?
Perhaps. And then a really significant one for substance, Motion 26. The National Delegates Conference now must consider position papers from the party's sector committees on key national issues.
So it's not just speeches and voting anymore.
Exactly. The goal stated is to have the conference actively consider and debate these reports and pass resolutions. It elevates the policy dimension significantly.
Turning the conference into more of a policy-making forum.
That seems to be the intent. And linked to that, Motion 27 changes who sits on those sector committees. They'll now include both MPs and non-MPs. The idea is to tap into the best brains available to the party, whether they're in parliament or not, broadening the expertise pool for policy work.
Bringing in outside experts, thinkers.
Potentially, yes. Or just utilizing talented party members who aren't legislators. And finally, Motion 30 sets up 4 new standing committees under the National Council. These focus on electoral affairs, communications, political strategy and policy, and security and intelligence. And the council can create more as needed.
Building more specialized capacity within the party structure.
Right. Seen as indispensable and crucial for effective functioning. So all these operational and policy tweaks, they raise a key question. How will this translate on the ground? Will it actually lead to a more efficient party, better policies, more effective governance when in power, or a sharper opposition when not?
Yeah, moving beyond just winning elections to being a more maybe robust and strategically minded organization overall.
That seems to be the ambition behind these changes, building a party structure that's fit for purpose in the long term, not just cycle to cycle.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this deep dive up. We've seen the NPP delegates make some really bold moves at this conference. There's clearly a strong thread of strengthening internal democracy, pushing for much broader inclusivity in how they choose leaders, and undertaking a pretty significant overhaul of their governance and operational structures. These aren't just minor tweaks. These internal shifts could have really significant implications for where the party goes next.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember, while these are internal party decisions, their impact doesn't stay within the party walls. How a major political party like the NPP adapts its own rules, how it defines power and participation internally, that tells us a lot. It offers real insights into the party's priorities, its values, its strengths, its weaknesses, and ultimately, its readiness to compete for power and to govern. Understanding these internal mechanics is key to understanding the broader political landscape.
It really is. Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listeners, to mull over. Considering this balance the NPP seems to be seeking between strengthening those grassroots voices, expanding participation, but also streamlining decision-making and professionalizing structures, how might these kinds of internal party reforms actually influence how voters like you perceive the party? Does it build trust? Does it signal competence? Or does it just look like internal maneuvering? And maybe more broadly, what does this episode tell you about the health and evolution of political parties themselves in a modern democracy?